So welcome everybody. As Darlene said, I am Melissa. I'm one of the behavior training specialists here. I'm going to be talking to you obviously about body language, reading the dogs and the cats so you know if it's safe for you to handle them. And then we'll talk a little bit about some safety issues, some things to keep yourself secure so that once you start working with a dog or a cat, you know that you're still okay, so that you don't get injured and so the animal doesn't get injured either. Obviously you guys don't want that. A few things to keep in mind before we get into this. Dogs and cats really don't want to hurt us. That's why there's all this body language and all this communication, because they don't want to injure you, and using aggression does put them at risk also. So it's partially just self-defense to not be aggressive towards people. So they really try to get you to back off if they feel that they need to. So people are injured because they either are ignorant to the signs, which is why we start doing this immediately before you get started in the kennel, so you know what to look for with the very first animal that you handle. Or they saw the signs and chose to ignore them. If a dog or cat is telling you to back off, back off. Okay, respect that. You might need to just change your approach if you have to actually handle the animal at that time, but respect that again and go from a different tactic, okay, if you come across that, and you're going to keep yourself safe. We're going to start with talking about dogs. When you guys are looking at a dog, what is the first thing on its body that you look at to tell you how it's feeling? Its tail. Okay. I guess I should say, what are all the things that you look at on its body?
Head.
The head, okay. What else?
Feet.
Feet?
Legs.
Legs, okay. Maybe overall body posture. Very good. Anything else? There's lots of other stuff. You want to look at the mouth. You want to look at the eyes. You want to look at the ears. So really everything on the head you want to kind of break down into its individual components. Okay? And then overall body. And the tail too. And tail is almost always the first thing that people say when we do this. I think it's very easy for us to see the tail at a distance. And that's why it's one of the things that we gravitate to first when we're seeing a dog from 20 feet away. We kind of have an idea just from seeing that. Some things to keep in mind though when you're talking about the tail, wagging does not necessarily mean that the dog is friendly. You need to look at the position that the tail is in and how quickly that tail is wagging. Okay? A tail that's carried very high is a sign of either confidence or arousal. It is important that you know your dog breeds too, because that is going to vary. An Akita or a pug, its natural tail carriage is over its back, like this. If a lab mix or a pointer is carrying its tail this way, that's not its normal thing. So that is a very aroused and confident dog. A tail that's carried low, in between the hind legs or even up to the belly, is a sign of being insecure or defensive. Again, sight hounds, like whippets and greyhounds, that tail is almost always between the hind legs. So they look like they're nervous a lot of the time, but they're not. Okay, so again, know the different breeds and what's typical for them. As far as the wag goes, a loose wag is ideally what you're going to see. And the actual best one is tail straight out behind, broad sweeping wag like this. So the dog is not overly confident, not overly defensive, and it's nice and loose so you know he's relaxed. Okay, so those are the good things to see. Stiff wag is a dog, again, who's alert. So it's not necessarily an aggression thing, but he is keyed up to what's going on in the environment and trying to be aware of things. The one you need to be more concerned about, though, is that the tail is up like this and it's a stiff wag this way. And that's a dog who is going to be a little bit more aroused. We're going to talk about arousal a little bit more later. That's one that you probably want to keep away from for a little bit. And then a fast wag, again, is aroused, generally very excited. So it might be friendly, but he just really has no self-control and is overly energetic. And we're going to show you some video now so you can see. Oh, one more thing, too, with the tail. Be aware of dogs who've had their tails docked. So Cocker Spaniels, Rottweilers, things like that. That does put you at a bit of a disadvantage because you would not necessarily be able to see what direction the tail would be in. And there might be a little stump there so you can see it's wagging, but you wouldn't know if it's that broad sweeping wag or a really fast stiff wag. Okay, so make sure you pay attention to everything else a little bit more when you're working with a dog who has a docked tail. So this dog here, again, neutral. This is pretty much typical for most dogs as far as their neutral position. It's just hanging there. There's no wag. There's no change in its normal position. Okay, so that dog's not really feeling much of anything right now. Now I've got a dog. This is going to be the broad, loose wag with the ideal position of straight out behind. In a moment he's going to stand up and he's going to do actually something that we call whirly bird. which means the tail goes in a big circle like this. 99% of the time, that's a friendly dog. Right? So look at everything else just to make sure. But here it comes. Just a moment as it kind of leaps up a little bit. So he goes in a big circle there, like a big propeller. Okay. And then as he goes back, again, you see it starts to rise up a little bit, but then it goes back to normal, so you can see it from the other angle too. Straight out behind, broad wag. He's hitting himself in the flanks, actually, as he's wagging his tail. And this is a dog who's on the alert. It's an aroused tail, so the tail's straight up in the air. It does wag some, but you're going to see that stiff wag. And then sometimes it just goes straight and stiff as well. And again, for a beagle, that would not be normal, neutral tail carriage. Again, it's a little faster, and then straightens up again. I think a dog is brought into the room, straightens up and goes stiff again. If you're working with the dog and it's wagging, 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 and then suddenly it stops wagging, make sure you know what's going on around it, because something has changed in the environment that has caused the dog to pause and figure out, and that's why that tail stops. They're trying to figure out how they feel about things, so you want to know what they think. So here we have a dog with a defensive tail. You can see it's between his legs. When he turns and gives you more profile, you'll see it even more clearly. It's really between the knees. It's not like that bloodhound where we're just hanging down and relaxed. He's tucking under. Okay? There is a reason. There's actually two reasons that this is a sign of a confident dog, and tail tucked is defensiveness. First one you guys would probably be able to figure out on your own. Tail up makes them look larger and more intimidating, along with other things that they're going to do that we'll talk about. Tail tucked makes them look a little smaller and less intimidating. But also, there is a scent gland at the base of the tail, which is why dogs sniff each other there when they first meet. A confident dog keeps that scent gland uncovered, so his scent is wafting out there for all the other dogs to smell. He's like, even if you don't come over to sniff me, you're going to know who I am. A defensive dog keeps that covered, so his scent is not out there. He's drawing even less attention to himself by not letting dogs even sniff him unless they really make the effort to come over. Okay, so it's not just a visual sign of I'm meek, please leave me alone. It's also covering up a lot of auditory cues that he even exists. Okay, so again, self-defense. Okay, so the mouth you do want to look at. Again, although we tend to look at the tail first, I would say this is where you want to pay the most attention probably, because this is where the weapons are, essentially. Normal for a dog is panting lightly. So mouth open a tad, and maybe you see the tip of the tongue, but that's about it. So you're going to look for extremes, either hyperpanting, which means the mouth is open very wide and they're panting excessively. The tongue is most likely really hanging out of the mouth. You'll also be able to tell because they are stressed and aroused, their blood is pumping more, which means more oxygen and more blood is getting to the extremities, so their tongue changes color. It can become a very, very deep, like maroon, like the color of the chairs here, or sometimes bright, like bubblegum pink, but more likely becomes a deep reddish color, like here, so watch for those changes. That is, again, arousal or stress, unless you've just had them out in the courtyard running around for 20 minutes. If they're just sitting in a cage and they haven't been exercised, you know it's stress that's causing this. And the other end of the spectrum then is a clenched mouth, also stressed, but very nervous and apprehensive and unsure about things. You will notice with these dogs that you can see some like rippling on the side of the muzzles because of the muscle tension from clenching their mouth closed. It's like they're gritting their teeth shut or grinding their teeth and clamping that jaw shut. When you see it a few times, you'll also be able to notice that they're not breathing normally. That's a little more nuanced, but you'll see it eventually. Tongue flicking is a sign of nervousness, so not licking their lips like they just ate something really good, but if the tongue flicks out forward and back a lot, that's a sign of being nervous. And then a curled lip or a snarl is, of course, a warning to back off, especially if they just show you, as we call it, Elvis lip. They just give you one canine there on the one side and they lift up their lip there. That's a warning. Some dogs smile when it looks like they're baring teeth. So again, look at the rest of the body. If they're raising the lips fully, if everything else about them looks good, then it's a submissive grin or a smile. And Samoyeds are especially known for doing this, but any breed can. If the mouth is closed and they're lifting up just enough to see the incisors, that's probably more of a warning. But again, look at the rest of the body and you'll know what's going on. So again, we have